Emily laughed, but not with joy. It was the kind of bitter laugh soaked in wine that thickens the air. Michael, I don't even know why we got married. I was never really into you. Not like that. You're safe. Her words slurred slightly, her eyes glassy. The third glass of Merlot dangled from her fingers like a loose truth she no longer cared to hide. Across the table, set carefully with white napkins, her favorite carnitas tacos, soft jazz humming from the speaker, I sat frozen. Every part of me wanted to believe I'd misheard. That she didn't mean it. That the wine was talking. But she looked me right in the eye. You're a good man, she added with a shrug. Reliable. But I need something else. I've been seeing someone. It's not serious, or maybe it is. Honestly, I don't know. I just needed something different. And she laughed again, like she was in on a private joke I would never be part of. Emily Parker, my wife of 5 years, my college sweetheart, slumped against the couch cushion and, within seconds, was fast asleep. I sat there alone, candlelight flickering against my untouched glass of water. No shouting. No broken dishes. Just silence. But in that silence, something in me shifted. I stood slowly, walked to the window, and stared out at the quiet street in our Portland suburb. The porch light buzzed softly. A dog barked in the distance, then stopped. I thought about the years I'd spent building this life. The double shifts. The car payments. The birthdays I nearly missed trying to earn just a little more. I told myself it was for us. For her. For the future. But hearing her confession slide so easily off her lips made me realize something. Maybe I wasn't building our future. Maybe I was just holding the weight of her unhappiness while she waited for someone or something more exciting to come along. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains like nothing had happened. Emily groaned as she woke, clutching her head. Ugh, what did I say last night? She mumbled, stumbling toward the kitchen. That wine hit me like a truck. She glanced at me, half laughing. I didn't say anything crazy, did I? I stared at her. She blinked. I was just venting, Mikey. It was a weird day at work. I didn't mean any of it. You know that, right? I didn't answer. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But something in me switched off completely. One thing was clear. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep holding up a life for someone who didn't even remember crushing it. But I couldn't just walk away. Not yet. We didn't have much, a modest home, average savings, but in a no-fault divorce, everything would be split. Without proof of what she'd said, the law would see us as equals. I'd lose half of everything I'd worked for, and she'd walk away with more than she brought in. No dramatic exit. No suitcase by the door. No polished lawyer in a downtown office. Just me, my thoughts, and a quiet fire that had finally gone cold. So I made a choice. I wouldn't leave. Not yet. But I wouldn't keep being the man I'd been, either. If Emily could live for herself, then so could I. For years, I'd buried myself in routines I hated and a job that drained me. I stayed late, said yes to everything, climbed a ladder I never wanted to be on. No more. That same day, while she texted at the table like nothing had happened, I logged into my work portal and requested an indefinite leave. I didn't quit, not yet, but the wheels were in motion. Emily didn't notice. She never noticed the little things. That night, I pulled out an old sketchbook I hadn't touched in years, the one with designs for tables, chairs, bookshelves I once dreamed of building with my own hands. Something real. My hands weren't made for keyboards. They were made for carving, for sanding, for shaping raw wood into something beautiful. Nobody knew it yet, but I did. And for the first time in years, I felt a spark. It wasn't freedom, exactly. It was direction. The scent of sawdust always carried me back to being 10 years old, watching my grandfather work in his old wood shop out in rural Oregon. I'd sit on a stool too tall for me, swinging my legs, watching him shape cedar boards with a patience I couldn't yet understand. He used to say, wood doesn't like to be rushed. Force it, and it breaks. It had been years since I worked with my hands. But 2 weeks after that night with Emily, I stood alone in the garage, facing a stack of pine boards I'd ordered online. I didn't have a clear plan. The space smelled like old grease, dried paint, and expired fertilizer, but it was quiet. And for the first time in a long while, it was mine. I didn't ask permission. I just stopped going to work. My access card sat forgotten in a drawer. I muted work emails. I hadn't officially quit, but in my mind, the decision was already made. Emily noticed on the third day. You're not going in again? She asked over coffee. What's going on, Mikey? You joined a silent retreat without telling me. I'm figuring things out, I said, adjusting a clamp on the workbench. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. We've got rent, bills. Your job had a pension, remember? And now you're out there building rocking chairs for fun. I didn't argue. What for? She didn't understand what it felt like to create something with your own hands. To take raw, imperfect wood and shape it. I wasn't just making furniture. I was building peace. I spent hours in that garage. Cutting, sanding, failing. The first table I made looked decent until it collapsed under the weight of a book. The second wobbled like it was seasick. But each mistake taught me something. I got better. Slowly. Meanwhile, Emily drifted farther away. She left the house more often. Dressed differently. Spent more time on her phone, whispering when I walked into the room. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I'd already heard the truth from her lips that night she claimed not to remember. Tension became routine. No shouting. No scenes. Just silent dinners and short answers. We shared a house, but nothing else. One night, I posted a blurry photo of a bookshelf I'd built. Nothing fancy, lightwood, clean lines. I expected nothing. But the next day, I got a message from a woman who knew my sister Lily. She was pregnant and wanted something similar for the baby's room. It is charm, she wrote. Feels like it was made with soul. It took me 3 days. I ruined 2 boards and got 4 splinters. But when I handed her the piece wrapped in a blanket, she smiled like I'd given her artwork. That evening, Emily came home in a tight red dress. Her perfume lingered long after she walked past. Someone actually paid for that thing? She asked, eyebrow raised. I didn't respond. You're serious about this? She added, half laughing. You'd rather play with wood all day than be a grown-up and earn like you used to? I didn't flinch. I didn't rise to it. I just looked at her. She rolled her eyes. Unbelievable. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't about money. It was about control. And she was losing it. A week later, she stopped speaking to me altogether. She slammed drawers harder. Came home later. Sometimes not at all. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. One afternoon, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Need some air. Don't wait up. That was it. No name. No explanation. No heart at the end. Just her absence. And you know what? I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. That night, I stayed in the garage long after sunset, oiling the wood on a new table. Soft music played from my phone. My hands ached, but my mind was calm. Orders hadn't started rolling in yet. Money wasn't flowing either. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was moving towards something. Something I chose. The day after Emily left, the silence in the house felt different. Not cold. Not heavy. Clean. I woke up early, out of habit, half expecting to see her coat draped over a chair or her half-empty coffee mug by the sink. But there was nothing. No note. No call. Just quiet. For a while, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the chair she used to sit in. I didn't miss her. I didn't want her back. But I had to admit, there was a shape missing in the air. Like the smoke left behind after a candle's blown out. I poured a cup of coffee and headed straight to the garage. That was my sanctuary now. The scent of cedar and pine hung thick and warm in the air. On the workbench, a half-finished console table waited for me. I ran my fingers along the grain, feeling every imperfection. That morning, I wasn't just making furniture. I was laying a foundation. Not for her. Not for us. For me. The first weeks alone were hard, but in small, invisible ways. The hum of the fridge felt louder. Nights dragged longer. I cooked too much and tossed the leftovers. I didn't know what to do with the empty space beside me on the couch. But every day, I returned to the garage. Sanding, cutting, varnishing, shaping something real. My second customer was a stranger. He'd seen my post online and asked for a coffee table. I didn't charge much. I still wasn't doing it for the money. But when he picked it up, ran his hand along the finish, and smiled, he said, "This feels like something made with care." That line stuck with me. Orders started to trickle in. A pair of nightstands. A kitchen stool. A spice rack. Each time I delivered a piece, I saw something in my client's eyes I hadn't seen in Emily's for years. Respect. I'd build a website. Nothing flashy. Just a name, Rio Woodworks, a photo of my hands holding a chisel, and a simple line. Made with time, not haste. No ads. No gimmicks. I let it grow at its own pace. Lily started visiting once a week, always with sweet bread in hand and the same question. How are you really doing? I'd smile, tell her about new orders, show off cuts of oak and walnut. She'd nod, like she understood more than I said. Emily never called. Never texted. At first, I thought she would. I half expected some message, some dramatic apology, maybe even another visit to the door. But it never came. And in a strange way, that made it easier. One Friday afternoon, I came home from a delivery and saw a letter on the front step. No return address. Just a folded piece of paper with my name on it in careful, looping cursive. It was from Emily. She wrote that she was sorting things out, that she hoped I was well, and that maybe someday we could talk. I read it once, then again, then tucked it in the drawer beneath a pile of sanding pads and wood shavings. I had nothing to say. She had left me with nothing. And now, I was learning how to fill the space she never really occupied in the first place. My hands were always busy, but my mind, it was finally quiet. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. I didn't even know if I was successful yet. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to tell me who I was. One evening, as I walked past the living room, I noticed a photo on the shelf. Emily and me, taken during our second year of marriage. I picked it up. For a long minute, I stared at my own face. I didn't recognize the man. He looked tired, like someone trying to be enough for someone who never really looked. I opened the frame, slid out the photo, and replaced it with a new one. It was a candid Lily had taken of me sanding a tabletop, sleeves rolled up, eyes focused, hands steady. That man wasn't pretending. He had become someone I could respect. Everything changed with a message. Simple, polite, direct. Hi, Mikey. I saw your work at Carol's last weekend. That dining table is stunning. I think I might have a project for you. Coffee soon. It was from Jamie, a local architect Lily had mentioned before. Known for restoring old bungalows, one house at a time, she was passionate about honoring their history and giving them a second life. We met at a quiet cafe in South Park, a place full of mismatched wooden chairs and salvage tables. Exactly the kind of spot where time moves slower. Jamie was about my age. Quiet but confident. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, fingers stained with ink from blueprints. She wore work boots with a dress, an odd pairing that somehow said more than any introduction. We talked mostly about wood. She told me about her latest restoration, a 1920s Spanish colonial with hand-carved beams and an entryway in need of a custom bench. She didn't want something fast. She wanted something right. That phrase stuck with me. We agreed to work together. I'd design and build the bench. She'd cover materials and pay full rate. No discounts, no favors. Just mutual respect. Over the following weeks, we traded sketches, notes, voice memos. Every time I heard her voice, calm, kind, focused, I felt something stir inside me. It wasn't attraction. It was presence. A reminder that some people truly see you. Not just your work. You. One afternoon, she stopped by the garage with 2 iced coffees and a paint-splattered pair of jeans. Figured you forgot to eat, she said with a smile. She walked the space like it mattered. Her eyes traced every unfinished piece as if it deserved attention. No empty compliments. Just quiet curiosity. It smells like purpose in here, she murmured once. I didn't know how to reply. We never spoke much about our pasts. I didn't ask about hers. She never mentioned Emily. But there was a quiet understanding between us. We had both been through fire and come out quieter, not colder. The bench turned out better than I imagined. Hand-carved backrest, gently curved legs, a warm cherrywood finish that glowed in the morning light. When we installed it in the entryway of that old house, Jamie stepped back, studied it, and whispered, "Perfect." Then she looked at me, and for a moment, something passed between us. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't rushed. It was real. She rested her hand on the backrest. You don't just build things, Mikey. You root them. That night, back in the garage, I sat alone and thought about what she said. For years, I'd been drifting, from job to job, inside a marriage that didn't see me. I spent everything trying to hold it all together. And in the process, I forgot what it felt like to be still, to stand firm. Jamie didn't give me butterflies. She gave me roots. And that's when I knew. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I wasn't surviving. I was living again. The first time someone tried to buy me, I laughed. Not because it was absurd, just unexpected. His name was Grant. He showed up at my garage on a Saturday morning with slicked back hair, spotless boots, and a business card that read, Creative Director, Timber and Company. He'd seen my work at the boutique in La Jolla, he said. One of my stools had apparently been featured in a home magazine, something I didn't even know about until he pulled it from his leather briefcase like a prize. We're always looking for artisans with story, he said, tiptoeing around my tools. Craft. Heart. Hands. He pointed to a half-finished shelving unit in the corner. You made that? I nodded. Thought so, he grinned. We're expanding custom lines, luxury commissions, even international distribution. You could be part of it. I didn't say no right away. He offered a lot of money. More than I'd ever seen. Talked about streamlining production, hiring a team under my name, turning Rio Woodworks into a global brand. It sounded big, even tempting, but something felt off. Not wrong, just hollow. After he left, I stayed in the garage for a long time, just staring at the shelf he'd liked so much. My hands had shaped every curve, every joint. It was mine. Would it still be mine if someone else finished it for me? A few days later, I called him. I said no. Kindly. Firmly. When I hung up, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Lily thought I was out of my mind. You turned down real money. I know. You could have expanded, hired help, grown. I don't want big, I said. I want honest. She looked at me for a long second, then smiled. Dad would have said the same thing. Weeks passed. Work kept coming in. Jamie brought more projects. I started experimenting with reclaimed tile, mixing wood and stone, trying designs I never had the nerve or time to attempt before. The garage turned into a living portfolio. One of my pieces, a bench with curved back and mosaic inlays, was accepted into a local artisan fair. It took a month to build. When I set it under the white canopy with a handwritten tag handmade, made with time, people didn't just glance. They stayed, ran fingers along the gray, sat down, closed their eyes like they'd found something old and true. That night, Jamie dropped by the shop. We shared takeout tacos on the back steps, cool air curling around us like a blanket. She looked at the garage, then at me. You built all this. I didn't answer. I just nodded. You know, she added, soft but steady, you don't need to become anything more. You already are. That hit me harder than any sales pitch ever had. For years, I chased someone else's idea of enough, a job title, a paycheck, a love that made me shrink to fit. Now, I was full, not with success, with identity, and for the first time in my life. That was enough. Success, even the quiet kind, has a funny way of making people remember you. It started with a message on social media from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Javier, an old coworker from the insurance office. We used to share lunch breaks and gripe about spreadsheets. When I left that job, he never reached out. Now he wrote, Dude, I saw your furniture in that shop in La Jolla. Had no idea you were such a craftsman. We should catch up. I left the message unread. Then more came in, like clockwork. A cousin I hadn't seen since my wedding. A neighbor from the first apartment Emily and I shared. Even the guy who once sold me warped lumber without making eye contact. Some wanted to reconnect. Others were fishing for discounts on custom furniture as a favor. And a few just wanted to orbit whatever glow they'd ignored when it was dim. At first, I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to be kind, the gracious craftsman who welcomes everyone. But a deeper part remembered who was absent when everything fell apart. I'd learned something by then. Respect isn't about admiration. It's about showing up. One afternoon, Lily caught the look on my face as I scrolled through those messages. You okay? She asked. I'm fine, I said. Just funny how people come back once the price tag's clear. She gave a sad little smile. Some folks only see value once it costs them nothing. That landed deep. A week later, I was at a weekend artisan fair, delivering a bench for display, when I saw someone I hadn't expected. Emily's sister, Marisol. She looked surprised to see me, then smiled like we were old friends. Mikey, she said, stretching my name like taffy. Wow, look at you. This is amazing. Thanks, I said, neutral, steady. She admired the bench I was placing. You made this. I nodded. I always knew you had talent, she said, though I remembered her calling me a sweet guy, but kind of boring at our wedding. I'm redoing my place, she added. Would love something custom. Could we maybe work something out? I paused. A year ago, I would have said yes, eager, grateful for the attention. Now? I'm booked for the next few months, I said gently. But you can visit the website. Her smile faltered just a little. Ah, sure. Of course. She drifted away. I stayed still, the breeze tugging gently at the corners of my shirt, and I realized something. I didn't owe access to people just because they finally decided to look. Seeing me now doesn't earn them a seat at the table they ignored when it was being built. That evening, back at the garage, I opened my inbox and deleted half the unread messages. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I didn't need to be cruel. Just careful. That same night, as I shut the workshop door, I glanced at the new table in progress. Walnut top, soft edges, bronze inlays. One of my best yet. It wasn't for a designer. It wouldn't end up in a magazine. It was for a retired teacher who'd saved for 3 months just to commission it. She cried when I said yes. And that was the only recognition I needed. There's a kind of silence that doesn't echo. It doesn't ache. It just is. And that's the silence I woke to one Sunday morning, more than 2 years since Emily stood at my door. Sunlight slipped gently through the curtains. Outside, birds pecked at the soil beneath the lemon tree I'd planted last spring. The house creaked like always, but I didn't feel alone. I felt grounded. The garage was warm when I stepped in. Varnish still clung faintly to the air. On the workbench sat a nearly finished headboard, arched oak, floral carvings. A wedding gift for a young couple who found me through Jamie. I ran my hands across the grain. Smooth. True. Patiently made. That afternoon, Lily dropped by. She never knocked anymore. She brought coffee and a small envelope. For Mom, she said. She saw your table in that article about local artisans. Inside was a note in her round, careful handwriting. I don't know wood, but I know pride. You've made something good, son. I smiled. Lily poked around the garage, inspecting new pieces, teasing me about still not labeling my tools. Then she paused. You look lighter, she said. Maybe it's because I stopped carrying everyone else. She nodded. No need to explain. That night, I took a walk to the little park a few blocks over. Just a bench, some trees, and the same broken fountain from when Emily and I lived nearby. I sat on the bench I built for the park last year. It hadn't been vandalized. Not a splinter out of place. It stood firm, despite rain, sun, and time. And I realized something. So did I. I stood firm, not untouched, but shaped by time. I no longer craved noise. No drama. No applause. Just rhythm. Just breath. That night, when I returned from the park, something tugged at me, quiet but persistent. I went into the garage, not to work, but to sit. Just sit. I leaned against the wall. The scent of pine and cherry would thicken the air. Outside, the sky was that deep navy blue that only comes right before full dark. I stared at the pieces lining the wall, benches, tables, shelves, and felt a strange stillness settle in my chest. Not exhaustion. Not pride. Just presence. I pulled out a fresh sketchbook. Not for commissions. Not for clients. Just for me. And for the first time in a long while, I drew without a purpose. No measurements. No deadline. Just lines that curved and crossed wherever my hand wanted to go. I didn't need a finish line anymore. I didn't need closure. Emily wasn't coming back, not in the way that mattered. And I no longer wanted her to. The truth was, she had never really seen me. Not the way I saw myself now. And then, almost as if summoned by that thought, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Mikey. I hope it's okay. I reached out. This is Jamie. I smiled before I even opened it. I've got another project I'd love to talk to you about. Thought we could meet for coffee if you're free. Simple. No pressure. No assumptions. I replied instantly. We met at the same cafe as before. South Park. The place with salvaged chairs and uneven tables. She wore her usual boots with a dress, hair a mess, ink stains on her hands. She smiled like we'd spoken yesterday. We didn't talk about the past. Not hers. Not mine. We talked about the project. A sunroom built entirely of old windows and rescued beams. She wanted a reading bench with built-in shelves and soft, worn edges. I wanted to feel like it's always been there, she said. Like it grew into the space. That sentence, grew into the space, sat with me all afternoon. That's what I'd done. I hadn't forced a new life. I'd grown into the space Emily left behind. As we walked back to her car, she turned and said, I've never met anyone who makes furniture that feels like memory. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't linger. But something in the air between us was settled. That night, I didn't go straight to the garage. I went to the kitchen. Cooked dinner for the first time in weeks, not just a sandwich or leftovers, but something warm. Something shared. Even if no one was there to share it. I ate by the window, watching the porch light flicker. And I felt full. Not with food. With the knowing that I didn't need anyone's permission to live exactly the way I was living. Later that week, I delivered the wedding headboard to the young couple. They hugged me, cried, took photos. sent me home with homemade jam in a mason jar and a card that read, "This will be part of our family story." I placed the jar on a shelf in the garage. Next to it, a folded letter, Jamie's sketch for the sunroom bench. And next to that, my first ever design, the shaky, uneven blueprint of a table that never stood right. I didn't keep them because they were perfect. I kept them because they were real. By late spring, the garage didn't feel like a workspace anymore. It felt like purpose with walls. The shelves were full, the tools worn just right, the air thick with the scent of oil and sawdust. Every surface held the fingerprint of a choice I made. No shortcuts. No noise. Just time and effort. One afternoon, while I was finishing up a new coffee table, a mix of maple and reclaimed barnwood, a message came in. From Jamie. She had just wrapped the sunroom project and wanted to stop by with a gift. "Just a small thank you," she wrote. She showed up with iced tea, a folded cloth, and a shy smile. The gift was simple, a set of handmade sketch pencils, each engraved with tiny words, patience, rooted, quiet strength. "I thought they matched your energy," she said. I ran my fingers over the engravings and, for the first time in years, didn't feel the need to say something back. She didn't stay long, just enough to look at the table I was working on, to say "that's beautiful," like she meant it, and to smile in that small, knowing way of hers. After she left, I stared at those pencils for a long time. There was no grand moment, no swelling music, just a realization. Someone saw me for who I was becoming, not who I used to be. That night, I posted a photo of the coffee table with a short caption. "Built slowly. Meant to last." The next morning, I had 3 new orders in my inbox. But more importantly, I had a message from a young man in the neighborhood. He said he'd been struggling after leaving his job, feeling like he had nothing to offer. He'd seen my work online, and something about it made him want to try again. "Not to build tables," he wrote. "Just to build something. Anything." I sat with that message for a long time. And then I wrote him back. I told him what I wish someone had told me when I stood in a garage full of doubts and a stack of pine I didn't know how to cut. Start with what's in front of you. Even if it's crooked. Even if it falls apart. Especially then. Every scar teaches you the shape of strength. Every failure makes your hand steadier. He replied with a simple, "Thank you." And that was more than enough. Later that week, I visited the little park again. The same bench I'd built, still standing. Still solid. A family sat nearby, 2 kids sharing a juice box, their parents reading on a blanket. No one knew who made the bench they were sitting on. And that was fine. I hadn't built it to be seen. I built it to hold. To endure. Back home, I swept the garage, organized tools, cleaned the workbench. I found the jar of jam from the wedding couple, still unopened. I placed it next to the pencils Jamie gave me and a copy of my original Rio Woodworks logo, faded, penciled by hand, no fanfare. There was no plaque, no ceremony, just a quiet garage filled with the steady breath of wood and light. And in that stillness, I finally understood something. I hadn't just rebuilt a life. I'd handcrafted one. Summer settled in slowly, the way it does in Portland. Early light, long evenings, the scent of warm earth, and with smoke slipping through open windows. The neighborhood quieted in the afternoons, and the only sounds in my garage were the gentle scrape of sandpaper, the low hum of the fan, and the occasional crackle of old jazz playing from my radio. One morning, while finishing a set of walnut nightstands, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a small card, thick paper, soft edges. "I saw your table at Jamie's open house," it read. It felt like something from another time. "Thank you for making things that matter." There was no name. Just gratitude. I kept the card. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me this was enough. I didn't need a spotlight. I didn't need applause. I just needed work that was true. That month, orders kept coming. I started turning down jobs that didn't feel right, not out of arrogance, but because I no longer needed to prove anything. Jamie and I saw each other more often, mostly at work sites, sometimes at the cafe, now and then in my garage. But never with labels. Never with pressure. There was something sacred about our quietness. One afternoon, she leaned against the doorway of the shop, watching me finish a curved bench. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "You've made a life out of patience." I paused, brush in hand. Or maybe, she added, "you just stopped rushing the parts that needed time." She didn't wait for a reply. She didn't need one. As the weeks passed, I noticed how full the space had become, not just with furniture, but with meaning. The sketchbooks stacked in the corner. The worn apron draped over the chair. the smell of cedar always lingering. Lily still came by, teasing me about putting up a sign that said, "Open by Soul, not schedule." She brought cinnamon rolls now, claimed I'd earned an upgrade. One evening, she sat on the garage steps and asked, "Do you ever miss her?" It took me a while to answer. "No," I said quietly. "I miss who I thought I had to be when I was with her." Lily nodded like she already knew. Later that night, I sat at my workbench alone. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the high window. I looked at my hands, rough, nicked, stained with time. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wish they were different. I wasn't waiting to become anything anymore. I was. That was enough.